Hello and welcome. Thank you for listening. I'm happy to be back with a new episode of the Hangry Mexican Podcast after a long hiatus. Balancing creating content with live events is not easy to say the least. That's something I would like to talk about in today's episode actually. Burnout is real, and the last year has not been easy. In fact, I'd like to kick things off with that and also how I came back from it and recovered. This may not be an easy episode to listen to, but I'm hoping that by listening to my story, it might help someone out there get out of the rut that they're in. So let's get started. All right, so after more than 12 years in the news industry, working 40 hours a week under different hats, working remotely because of a pandemic, and finally, it happened. I felt burned out. I actually stopped enjoying my work, and I felt like I just wanted to relax, not work, and get away from it all. However, at the same time, I felt like nothing I did would get me out of this rut I was in. I suppose I could have reached out to professionals for help, but I don't know, something about it just felt intimidating and unnecessary. You have to remember, I grew up in a Mexican household where we rarely went to the doctor, and we fixed sickness, if you will, with Vicks and Sprite. Yeah, all my fellow Mexicanos out there, they know what I'm talking about. Now, in the end, maybe going through professional help may have helped me get out of my burnout phase a lot faster. But eventually, I feel like I got out of it with the help of an employer that genuinely cared about employee welfare first and foremost. So I'll get to that in just a moment, but let me start at the beginning a bit. What exactly led to my burnout? To understand it, I first looked up the definition of burnout in a person. Burnout, in a nutshell, is a form of exhaustion caused by constantly feeling swamped. It's a result of excessive and prolonged emotional, physical, and mental stress. This explained a lot. I firmly believe that my burnout began at my news job in Santa Barbara. So in 2017 and 2018, a terrible fire and mudslide occurred in South Santa Barbara County that resulted in death. Now that wildfire in particular was exhausting because I remember working 24/7, only breaking away for some sleep and eating. And I did that for almost a month straight. Days and weeks blurred into each other. It was crazy. I was so exhausted after the whole thing. And by mid-2018, I was just on the decline. At the time, I didn't equate that with burnout, but I felt different. My body and mind felt different, and no real amount of time off was fixing that. What kept me going was the respect and love of my community and coworkers that I felt genuinely had a heart. What didn't help was newsroom politics, which quite often would lead to low morale among some of the employees. I had been at the station for way too long and experienced up and downs. Some years would be better than others as old staff left and new folks came in. But this time, those newsroom politics mixed with back-to-back traumatic events for the community. Feeling massively exhausted, I took time off, finally. I love what I do for my community. I love the fact that I have a voice that can speak for the forgotten. I love it so much that vacation was a foreign concept to me, and I think in the end, that also greatly contributed to my burnout. In 2019, I accepted a job in Los Angeles. I talk a little bit about this in a previous podcast episode. And let's just say I was elated to get an opportunity to prove what a boy from small town Santa Barbara, California could do in LA. And the change of scenery was very welcomed. I was inspired to create. And for the first few months, I felt like I was living the dream. Good pay, good benefits, people that were at a different professional level that I could learn from. But that all changed one day. Because by the end of 2019, the news director I had such a high respect for was let go from her position. And the general manager that was a big supporter of the team I was in was also reassigned from his position. After a new news director was introduced, along with a new GM, things only went downhill from there, and fast. To top things off, I saw my immediate supervisor's true colors. He certainly preferred and liked some people in the team he managed more than others, throwing good workers under the bus, the bullying from those who were supposed to be the leaders of the newsroom, the constant put downs, the hidden agendas. Everything just contributed to low morale. Very, very low morale. A lot of people either quit, were fired, or retired early because of the poor situation going on at the station. I thought I could just bury myself in my work and personal creative projects and ride the wave, but it all came crashing down one day in 2020. My employment there ended after I refused to lie on a news story. The news director and my immediate supervisor wanted me to purposely ignore facts for a particular story just to drive their own biased agenda. Now, as a journalist, I felt this was wrong and the stress levels went up, way up. Not to mention the disillusionment of the whole situation. After my lunch break was over that day, I realized that someone had tampered with the story that I had written and excluded facts that I had initially included in my write-up. Later, I found out that the order to change the story to a biased story was given by the news director, who I never thought in a million years would do. That was the end of that chapter. After that point, my burnout only increased. I was fortunate enough to find work quickly with another station in the city. It was good for a while, but the fact that a raging pandemic kept me from physically meeting with my coworkers or even visiting the station I was working for alienated me even further from my employer. I was not enjoying it. I've always been an introvert by nature, but working a job 100% remote and never seeing your teammates, that's not as good as some folks may think it is. The disconnect was real, and in the end, I felt that contributed to treatment that wasn't healthy. What do I mean by that? Well, let me put it this way. I often felt that I wasn't unequal to the rest of my peers there. Plus, covering horrible news day after day didn't help. No matter how long you've been working in the news industry, too much negativity will eventually affect you. By the end of my tenure at this station, my burnout was on hyperdrive, and there were plenty of times when I felt that maybe the best thing to do was just to get out of the news business altogether. But I still loved what I did as a digital journalist. In 2021, I applied for several jobs in and out of the news industry. I felt like I needed to try something new after being in a television newsroom for over a decade. For a brief moment, I thought, hey, maybe a news radio station was going to do the trick. Burnout, I felt, made me make a decision that was not the right fit in the end. And this only contributed to further burnout and depression. So just really quickly, this is what happened. They had promised me the moon and back, and I believed them because it was a reputable organization in Southern California. I was there for a few days for a meet and greet and orientation period. But what I witnessed sent me running for the hills, and it's the only job I had ever taken back my offer acceptance due to all the red flags that popped up. I just felt duped. I felt lied to, and I felt that I had done irreparable damage to other organizations that I had applied to. My burnout also led to my creative juices to stop flowing, and my creativity tanked. Burnout led to depression. Burnout led to this sense of defeat within myself. I had resigned to the idea that moving out of California was going to be the best thing for my family and me. However, my amazing wife convinced me to give the job application process one last try, so I did. Within 24 hours, I received a response from the person who would soon become my boss. The call was from the number one TV news station in Los Angeles, and I was so very fortunate that they took a chance on me, and at the start of 2022, I was back in the newsroom. This time, the pandemic situation had improved enough that I had a hybrid work situation where a few days I'd work remote and other days I'd be at the station. I'm not going to lie, I still had PTSD from the previous stations that I had worked at, but I needed to pay my bills. Now, what I found there, though, was that this was much more than just a job. It was actually a home away from home. Everyone was incredibly nice, helpful, and professional. I felt I was family from day one. It was an amazing feeling to get to know my teammates and coworkers in person, face to face, and develop that sense of camaraderie. The work ethic and work environment was incredibly positive. Team leaders would take mistakes or errors and turn them into learning opportunities that helped me greatly improve my skills. Every day was a joy. All that gave me faith and hope that there are work environments out there that can be healthy and productive. Above all, it broke away my burnout symptoms, piece by piece. I felt so invigorated that soon enough, it didn't just become a job that was paying my bills, but it became a job that was improving my health. So after a few months there, my burnout was gone. I definitely could feel the positive change in my mental health. I felt my creative juices flowing again, and I began making content again. My friend Julio, who I have known since the high school days, is a musician, and we talked about experiencing burnout during the pandemic and how it can be overcome, how to stay creative and motivated. This is part of that conversation. Just going back to the pandemic a little bit, I just want to know how you dealt with it. I kind of tried to go into focusing on content creating for a while. I did that. And then, I was without a job for a few months in 2021.
That was rough for you, man.
Yeah, it just kind of got me down enough that I didn't really want to create any content.
So you were a part of that. Like that was happening. You would hear in different news and stuff and reports, and you're one of those people that they lost jobs, got furloughed or laid off,
Yeah, exactly. And I was, not in a good spot because it was just hard for me to find work. And so that translated into me not wanting to create content. For me, it was more like if I don't have a job that's fulfilling me or my needs, I don't feel really inspired to create content. And so I stopped that for a while. So
you kind of reached the low point there.
Exactly. Yeah. The creative content was just less and less as the pandemic and the job situation progressed. And then the job I have right now, I mean, that kind of lifted my spirits up because it showed me what a good work environment is, a healthy work environment.
Yeah. Not a toxic place.
Exactly.
So now you're like in a better mental place. You would
exactly. And so that's influencing me into creating more content and getting back into what I like doing on the side.
That's good, man. That's nice.
Yeah. And so for you, I just want to know how you dealt with the pandemic and that progression. If there was at any time, a peak where you kind of just reached the maximum and then kind of went down or going up and down constantly. Like just
how did that affect me personally?
Exactly. Yeah. And your art too.
So that was a crazy time in the world, it felt like everything was locking down when it started, and people were going kind of haywire. And I worked at the store, at the supermarket. So you see everybody buying toilet paper. The toilet paper was gone, man. And people were buying stuff like crazy, like loading up. Like we could put meat out there and it's gone. Like it would be gone. And and it just felt, you could feel like a negative energy too.
Yeah.
And you could feel this aura, like people were not happy and not just because they were getting sick and dying,
Yeah.
But it felt like a lot of people were going through depression and stuff. Really depressed about life and just the pandemic and how it's affecting them. And you could see people around you, man, they affected. I think a coworker died of COVID too. So I had a cousin who died of COVID. That's how that really hit me hard too, because you don't think it's gonna, and I lost a niece too during COVID, but not because of COVID. So you see people dying, you see how it affects your relatives and your family.
Yeah.
And then you think like, oh man, it hits you too. And I try to keep things in perspective too. I always think, well, I'm blessed. Even during this, I'm blessed. I always try to keep that in my mind. Even if I start feeling a little depressed, I always try to rise up. I always give thanks and praise to God, to Jah. I always do that. And because that's what lifted me up. That's what made me sure that I don't go and depress and turn my life. I feel like if I didn't have reggae music, I would have already made like really stupid life choices. I would have made really bad.
Like what?
Like I would
watch the Kardashians.
Oh man, I forgot to DVR those, man. Gee, good thing you reminded me that. No, but I would have.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I would have dwelled in negativity in some way. I don't know what, but I would have if I didn't have this thing existing, and that's where I feel like I'm blessed. I feel like everything that I dip into has always brought me closer to God, to Jah.
Yeah.
Like even my interest in football, the Packers and all that. And Reggie White was, when I was a little kid, that was my favorite player.
Yeah.
So I read his book, and he's all about God and being blessed and all that. And I'm like, how is this a coincidence? I felt like this was kind of a message to, hey, get your life together, get your life together. Be, don't be depressed, no matter what happens, no matter if there's a pandemic or whatever, And it did affect me a little bit. Your mentality, you're always very masked. You see people buying like that, and the energies of people, But I always think, man, there's people that died. There's people that are dying, man. There's people that are suffering. And I'm over here because of this little, I try to think, and to have a tougher mind about things, not to get so down because of things. Always stick to it and don't get down. Don't get depressed. Have that strength to rise up above those things. And so that I made sure that I had that quality. So the people around me, family and friends, so they don't get that aura of negativity off of me. I don't want to be that person. If someone is going to cross my path now, that's one thing that I realized during this pandemic too. If people are going to cross my path and come to me and tell me about personal things, because I get that too from coworkers a lot. They'll tell me personal issues, like serious issues too, that come up in their personal lives, and stuff that I'm not really free to discuss because it's a personal thing of another person. But when they do that, if I get that vibe, hey man, this person trusts you with a really personal thing, then I have to make sure that my aura is right. That I'm I'm in tune, that I'm not sending any kind of poison to that person, that if they actually see me as a person that they could talk to, then I'm going to be, and whoever it is, if they're coming to you like that, you got to be good to them, give them that, and you could uplift people that way too, and during the pandemic, there's a lot of isolation, man. It makes us isolate. And this is what's cool. Like, we're doing right now, we're not in isolation right here. We go hang out. You could be with your friend, you could go on a hike or something, There's to get out of the isolation, because I feel that this pandemic has done that to people, especially the younger people too, the younger generation who are probably trapped, or they had to go to school. There's lockdowns and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a normal social life. It's not we're not maturing socially how maybe like our ancestors did, and the pandemic is affecting all these new things that are being thrown to us, or maybe even old things that are being thrown to us. It could be from whatever era or whatever, can bring you down. A pandemic can bring you down. But how are you gonna respond to that, to the trouble time? How are you going to carry yourself during that bad time? Everybody could be cool during the happy times. Everybody could be positive. But how are you? Can you still be that positive person and rise in the strength, rise in the strength while the pandemic is going on, while you're feeling depressed, and you go through the little episode. And so you've done that, Oscar. You came out through it. Now you're feeling the creative, the creative energy.
Yeah.
So I kind of went through that too. I used that as a time to reflect on my health too. I was thinking, what should I do? What should I do? I could just be scared of this. Am I going to die from this? Or should I treat this a health thing? So that's where I treated it as a health thing, where I'm going to focus on my health, put good things in my body. That's the part of it. Is the pandemic made me even more into that, because everybody is feeding you, fighting over vaccine. No, vaccine, yes, vaccine, no. And it could save your lives. And all this stuff has been proven, scientifically. But why aren't we pushing good things into our body? Like, why is that not a thing? Why isn't that a big thing to push? Let's push all these things. Let's push these vitamins and get our people strong. So people are not depressed. So people are not walking around sad because of a pandemic. To rise people up, for people to to bring awareness to what you're consuming, your energy. What are you consuming, and things that could make bring light to your life, and all of that has come into more awareness to me during the pandemic.
So, how do you overcome burnout? In a nutshell, don't underestimate the power of in-person interaction, especially in the workplace, since that's where you'll most likely be spending most of your day. A healthy and positive work environment is key. A toxic work environment will only have you bringing that baggage home. And who needs that? Have some balance in life. And as I said earlier, one of my fatal flaws was that I didn't care enough about my own well-being to ask for vacation time often. I just wanted to work. Now, I try to find the balance between work and life. I even took up fishing. And that balance allows me not only to pay the bills while enjoying what I do, it also allows me to have a good home and family environment and continue creating content. I feel motivated in life now more than ever thanks to that balance. It took some self-discovery in addition to finding just the right workplace to alleviate my burnout symptoms. This is what worked for me. But for others, it may involve seeking professional help. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's very important to understand why your burnout started so that you can understand how to alleviate it. I hope that today's episode helped you if you're experiencing burnout. Recognizing its symptoms are very important and dealing with them even more. If you have any comments or questions regarding this episode or the podcast in general, send them to hangrymexicanpodcast@gmail.com. I've also included a link to my YouTube channel for additional digital content in the description. And please rate the Hangry Mexican Podcast on Apple Podcast and all other major platforms we are streaming on. The more you rate, the more ears this podcast will reach. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for listening. And until next time, stay safe, good night, and good luck.